Welcome, everybody. This is Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. It is Tuesday, September 27th, unless I'm completely mistaken. Yes, it is. My clock is confirming this statement. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a product manager in the Microsoft 365 platform areas, and I'll be your host today. Now, today we'll have a typical set of agenda items. So we'll have some of the typical slides and updates, and we have some new slides there as well related on the latest assets which are available and some upcoming events. We also could go through the latest updates on the Microsoft Teams platform documentation, given the Microsoft Things is the central of the Microsoft 365 platform. We'll then also go through some of the latest announcements and news from the Microsoft side, which this time are focusing mainly on the Microsoft Viva. And I will tie in also not only from an end user perspective, but also talk a bit about the extensibility options there within that section. Last week, we didn't announce pretty much anything else because there was the Satya Nadella special event with Viva topics and with Viva areas. And then we'll have the group photo with all of you, or well, first 50 people. I guess sooner or later we will increase that to be larger than that. But first 50 people who put the video on, we will grab a group photo on that, and we'll share that in social media. Then we'll have the real stars of the day, aka.ms. She's a cloud advocate from the Microsoft 365 Cloud Advocate site. She's going to talk about building a productivity dashboard by using Microsoft Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio. Now, keep on there. It's about the Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio version of Teams Toolkit went GA few months ago already, maybe roughly. Time flies when you're having fun, but on summertime, the Visual Studio Code went live a bit earlier than that. And then on the second part, on the second demo, I will talk about bit about the positioning and latest updates on the SharePoint Framework. We're having some new capabilities and extensibility points and shared from last week. And we will have actually even more coming in upcoming weeks, which I cannot talk yet, but we'll do a live demo on those after Ignite. But we'll want to do a kind of a baseline setting on what is a SharePoint Framework, because the name is so misleading, because it's an extensibility model for Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, SharePoint, and actually even more in the future, which is really, really cool. But we'll talk about that one as the second demo. Now, as you're looking into, and there's always well, maybe you're looking into, or maybe you're not familiar with all of the assets which are available for Microsoft 365 platform, and we wanted to always recap them in here. We do have two different YouTube channels. We recommend you to subscribe on both of them. We have the Microsoft 365 developer videos, where we have, in quotes, the official videos coming out from the product marketing and also cloud advocates. And then we have the Microsoft 365 community videos, where all of our community call recordings, demos, and all of those are getting published. Both of them have awesome content getting released every single week. Community video channel side, we release actually a video in every single day, at least one video, which is really, really cool. So all the time new content available for you to take advantage. We have a lot of stuff in a GitHub, in multiple GitHub locations. But since finding the right sample from GitHub might be a bit difficult, because again, there's so many repos, so many locations in a GitHub, we actually started creating these sample galleries. And the main sample gallery is the aka.ms M365 samples, from where you can find all of the different samples created by Microsoft or community from one centralized location. So if you're looking into Microsoft Teams bot framework sample for doing something, go there, use the search. Poof, you'll find a sample, which is a great starting point for you to get started. Now, if you're wondering that there's too many URLs English is hard. If there's too many URLs to remember, luckily there's only one of them, which is aka.ms M365 community, which is the welcome page for the Microsoft 365 platform community, from where you'll find our blog post, blog location, all of the assets, links, and videos, and many other areas as well. Now, that location is the blog in that location is great also for community call recording summaries. So all of the summaries as we go through in the community calls, all of the assets, links, everything else are getting mentioned in that blog post location. Now, we do have a lot of community calls. We are looking into a bit more consolidating these. Let's see when that will happen. This is the primary one, which is the Microsoft 365 platform call, which happens every single Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We will be here for you, showing you the latest capabilities. And presenters in this call are typically Microsoft employees, so either cloud advocates or PMs or engineers. Like in this call, we actually have a cloud advocate, a PM, and an engineer doing presentations. Then we have adaptive cards, Microsoft Identity Platform, Office add-ins, and Power Platform calls, which are monthly calls. And then we have the series, which happens on every single Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific time, where it's either the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or Viva Connections and SharePoint Framework call. You can download all of the invites as a recurrent invites to your calendar from aka.ms M365 calls. Now, a few other assets on getting started things. So the Microsoft 365 developer program is by far the most efficient way of getting started in the Microsoft 365 as a developer, because you get a free tenant. And as long as you use it for development purposes, it will renew automatically. So really, really great asset for you to take advantage. The second thing is the free learning material, which we have available through the Microsoft Learn from aka.ms M365 Dev and Learn. We have a lot of modules available for you to take advantage. Now, as we release new capabilities and features, we always go them through in our podcasts, which we use also to introduce you to engineers and PMs and people and community members as visitors within this podcast. We do have two of them, one of them being the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast, hosted by Jeremy Fake and Paul Scheffelin, and then the other one being the Microsoft 365 PnP Weekly, which is hosted by me, and then Waldek Mastergaard, who's a cloud advocate, where we have typically an MVP or a PM and also visiting every single time. And we also go through the weekly updates from Microsoft, which is really, really cool. Thank you, by the way, for Emon on the feedback on the chat related on the developer program. It is truly amazing. Now, coming back on the samples, just to promote that one, we have more than 1,100 samples. Right now in the UX, we don't actually show you the exact numbers, but there's a lot of them available for you to take advantage. Some of them might work as such. And we include samples for Microsoft Teams, for Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automates, Office, Microsoft Craft Toolkit, SharePoint Framework, and so on. So there's a lot of content available for you to take advantage. So rather than starting from scratch, pull down a sample, learn it, have a look on it, and reuse the assets which are available. They are there for you to take advantage. Now, if you are not super familiar on how to get started on those samples, we actually got you covered as well. I'm just looking into. Good. David Warner did not join the call. Cool. He should be out of office. So that is really good. I just wanted to double check that he's not here. So as you're wondering, how would I get started on using those samples, or how would I get started even contributing back? We do have a program hosted by our MVPs and Microsoft employees, which is the Sharing is Caring initiative. And this is really a program to help you, a safe program to help you to get started on learning the basics. A lot of us, well, every single day we learn new things, and it might be intimidating to start learning those things or ask those hard questions in social media and Twitter. And this program is really there for help you to get started. So we do have different kind of calls and different kind of guidance available for you to get started on Power Platform, first-time contributing on GitHub, writing in web, SPFX developer workstation setup, and so on. And there's so much more in the schedule as well. Now that the Power Platform conference was done last week, a lot of our crew were actually initiating or coordinating that. We will have more time on doing scheduling and planning what's going to happen here within upcoming weeks. Now, something else what we wanted to call out, if you are an ISV, so you're building applications for Microsoft Teams, we do have a specific training material available for you for building solutions with monetization for Microsoft Teams. And of course, even though you would not be super interested about monetization part, you still learn how to build solution for Microsoft Teams through this updated material. We do have an async self-learning material available at https aka.ms app camp. And then there's a really new, actually this was announced yesterday, a new online event on October 20th, where we'll have Bob German and Rabia Williams to actually going through the app camp material and showing you live how to get started on creating Microsoft Teams applications. So really, really great opportunity of seeing live the material, which you can also learn by using the async self-learning material package. The other thing that we wanted to remind everybody is that the Ignite is coming. So Ignite is coming in October 12th to 14th. Is it 2 weeks from now? Something like that. It is roughly 2 weeks from now, which is really, really cool. Ignite is in Ignite, we always do the latest announcement from an end user, administrative, developer perspective in many, many areas. So it's a really great conference, and we kind of tend to always delay the big announcements either in Ignite or in Build. And I've seen what we're going to announce there, and there's a lot of cool stuff covered this year as well. It's mainly online. So, and it doesn't cost you anything. There is an on-premise or in-person option as well, and that will have a cost if you're looking into flying to Seattle to see that stuff live. So, a really good point which Nick raised actually on the chat. Thank you, Nick. Really good stuff. We do have local Ignite events as well. So there are local events in the UK, if I remember correctly, Singapore, a few other locations, which are intended to actually have an in-person experience locally in the regional location, which is a great opportunity to actually meet the other local community members who are building similar capabilities or working in a similar areas as well. So please have a look on ignite.microsoft.com. Thank you, Nick, on that one. Really, really cool. Now, last week, as mentioned, the only news which we actually announced were related on Satya Nadella's update, where he was joined with Jared Spataro, who's our marketing lead, and a few others to talk about the latest in the Microsoft Viva. So there was a lot of new announcements on the Microsoft Viva side. So there's a people in Microsoft Viva, which brings an easier organization structure to be available for end users. There was a announcing of answers in Microsoft Viva. So having that answer questions and answer capabilities there. A lot of new capabilities in Viva topics. So a lot of options there. There was new announcements on the Microsoft Viva connections, including Microsoft Viva Home, which is a new free Microsoft Viva Home landing page for people to get started on accessing the information in the Microsoft 365. I'll touch that a bit later today in the SPFX section as we talk about what it means for the extensibility as well. And then there's a new experiences coming to Microsoft Viva Engage. Viva Engage probably is the product formerly known as Yammer. That's probably the easiest way to say that. We use that heavily internally in Microsoft. It is actually a really great community platform for internal communities, and there's a lot of announcements there as well. All of these are found from aka.ms Microsoft Viva blog location, so please check them out. A lot of cool capabilities there. Now, before we go to the Together mode picture, and the actual demos of today, we'll also go through the latest Microsoft Teams platform updates in the documentation side. And unless I'm not mistaken, it's Vachit who's going to cover Teams.
Yeah. Thanks, Asa. Hello, everyone. Today, we have two updates to share on Teams platform documentation. Let's start with the first one. We have introduced zone pivots for What's New section, which allows you to filter new feature based on availability. You can now filter easily to check features which are G8 versus developer preview. We also introduced deprecated features sections, which will list the Microsoft Teams platform features that are no longer supported or available. Second update is on SSO for Teams apps. We have completed our revamp for tab SSO documentation based on the feedback we received. This activity is being performed in phased manners. Phase 1 is completed with the SSO for tab app section, and we'll be working on the bots and messaging extension next. In this update, we added clarity of steps and procedure for authentication, understanding of difference between the SSO and non-SSO authentication methods, requirements, and the correct technical process for basic implementation of SSO authentication in a tab, and improved discoverability of content by correcting the structure and the page names. Please feel free to share your feedback. If you have any suggestion, please feel free to post it on aka.ms/Teams platform feedback. The link is available in the footer. You could also follow us on Twitter and configure to the RSS feed to get the regular updates on Teams platform. Thank you. Back to you, Vesa.
Excellent. Thank you, Vachit. Just to recap and reinforce what you were saying there in the last, we are creating all of our development documentation for you. So the people who are part of the community building experiences for Microsoft 365. So if there's a missing capabilities, you don't like something in the documentation, please let us know. We seriously want to make it a location which you want to use, and we want to improve the documentation. Of course, just to call it out, don't go and say, this is crappy, blah, blah, blah. Rather, provide constructive feedback on how we can improve. And that's always taken in a much more nicer way, and then we are able to address whatever gaps are available there. But thank you for that one. And next we will do a group photo with all together. Let's be Seb. Seb is probably coming back from parental leave pretty soon, so we'll have more of Seb fun coming up on these calls as well. Let me put my camera on if I'm able to do that. Here we go, and then I will start still my Camtasia recorder. Too many buttons to click this time. 1 second. Not yet. Wait. Where's my Camtasia recording? It is there, and we still have a few more seats in the room. I will fill. I guess that's all 50. I will put the recording on. We can do some hand waving, everybody. Awesome to see once. Oh, Seb is in the house. Awesome. Good to have you there, showing an example. I completely missed you in the listing. Awesome, Seb. Or maybe you're just a video recording. You're repeating exactly the same dance.
I'm not.
There we go. Excellent. Thanks everybody for joining. Really cool to have you on the call. Thanks everybody. We'll grab a GIF animation out of that, and let me move that in there. Completely missed you there. Now let's go then on the actual stars of today, and we'll start with the aka.ms related on building a productivity dashboard by using Teams Toolkit for Microsoft Studio, and then we'll go to Alex Tarantiev, and I'll do some presentation or slides with Alex on that section. Let's go to aka.ms.
Hi everyone, my name is Aicha Bush. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, mainly focusing on Teams and Microsoft Graph developer solutions. So today we will build a productivity dashboard by using Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio, and we will use .NET for building the solution, and we will create Teams tab to, we will use Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio and Teams tab with that using .NET, and then we will use Microsoft Graph Toolkit to design our application. So we will use calendar events, to-do tasks, and some file folders just to showcase how we can design our own app. But if you want, there are also other components available in the Graph Toolkit, so you can just check out the documentation. And before I start sharing my screen, I just want to share that my colleague Gary presented Get Started with Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio last week. So if you go to the YouTube channel for the community, you can check out his video and learn about the fundamentals. Let me actually share my screen. Let's take this over here and make sure everything is working. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, all good.
Okay, sounds good. So today we will use Visual Studio, and if you want to learn more about how to set up, what sort of tools you need for building apps with the Teams Toolkit, you just check out the Gary's video, Getting Started with the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio. I will just move forward with how to customize the apps, but we will still create an app from scratch, so don't worry. So first thing, I open Visual Studio 2022 and then create new app. I will just type Teams. Here, there are different options you can go for when you're creating a Teams app. Let's just keep as my Teams app 6. You can call it as one productivity app 2. As I mentioned, there are different options when it comes to create Teams apps. We can create notification bot, comment bot, tab in messaging extension. Since we will build a productivity dashboard, we will actually create a tab in this example. I will just create, and let's wait until it's creating the project. So we already have a template coming with the Teams Toolkit. So when you actually create the tab and then run the app straightforward, you will see that there is a good template coming, and it's also providing the authentication feature, which is awesome. So you don't have to do a lot of customization. Okay, so I just created the Teams tab, and before we do any editing, let's run the app and see what's coming in the template, and then we can customize it further. Before we run the app, we actually need to complete some prerequisites, but we don't need to do anything manually. Teams Toolkit already provides some preparations. If you right-click to the app you create and go to Teams Toolkit, you will see there's a Prepare Teams App Dependencies. When I click to this, it will bring me a page with Microsoft 365 account. Here, make sure that you log in with Microsoft 365 developer account, which will give you a free sandbox to test, debug all of your apps related with Microsoft 365, which is awesome. It's free and it is super useful. I'm sure you heard of this in this community calls a lot of times, but I'm using my own N365 developer account here. I will click continue, and then Teams Toolkit will do all of the preparations for my account, which includes Azure Active Directory app registration as well. So once all the preparations are done, without editing anything in the code, I will just go ahead and run the application to check out what is available. You can change the browser here if you want to test out with something else. I will just run it for Edge and see how it looks like in the Edge. Everything I do here, by the way, is available as a tutorial too. I will share the tutorial link at the end of the presentation. So if you want to try out yourself, you can go ahead and check out the tutorial and follow step-by-step guidelines to build the exact same thing. It started running in the browser. Let me grab it in here. So Teams Toolkit basically does all the preparation, as well as it will pop up the Teams with the account I registered initially in the dependency preparation part. It will log into Teams so you don't have to do it again. And then it will bring you the app when it is ready. You just need to click add, and then you will see what is coming with the tab in the default template. So it's loading right now. Okay, here we go. I will just click add, and then I will see it in a basic chat. If you want to test it in the channel, you can just click on this little arrow and you can choose where you want to test this tab. But for now, let's go for the basics. Okay, so it's loading the default template. We actually have a really good looking default version of the tab. We have some information about the app. It's a Blazor server app. And then if you want to get the current user information, it's explaining how to do that. And we can actually authorize. That means default template also provides the authentication feature. I will accept this, and then we should be able to see the person card at the bottom, which is a great feature, as you can see here. In this demo, I will show you how to use the existing Azure Active Directory app registration, so we don't have to worry about going to the Azure Active Directory admin portal and then creating an app registration from scratch, copy, paste keys and stuff. We don't have to do any of these steps. So let's get started building our custom app. I will start with the host CSHTML. Here, this will be the place we will call our MSAL2 provider from Microsoft Graph Toolkit, which will help us get the single sign-on authentication going for the Microsoft Graph Toolkit components. This is quite necessary because we want to use the components to make our application easier and look much nicer like any Microsoft experience. We don't have any specific provider in the MGT yet for .NET, but maybe in the future. I don't know. We should check with Seb. Okay, so I will start with some dependencies before adding my MSAL2 provider. I will just copy and paste them here. I'm using configuration because I will gather some of the Active Directory credentials, some of the Active Directory keys from the existing app. And in the body, I will just paste the script. Here, let me zoom a bit more just to showcase what is in it. Okay, the first script is MGT loader, which will bring me all the goodies from Microsoft Graph Toolkit, including providers and the components. So in the second script, we are calling MGT, but MSAL2 provider, which means that in the MSAL2 provider, we will be authenticated, and then afterwards we will be able to use the components. But in this case, we are doing something different. We are actually first using the existing client ID instead of copying and pasting. So I use configuration here and get the authentication client ID from the Teams effects, which is existing in the app settings.json. And the second thing we do, just to carry on with the single sign-on, we are giving login hint. That means that we will just give the user preferred name, and then this will carry on without asking any login information from the user. So when we run the app, it should be able to run straightforward. If there is any permission need to be asked, then it will pop up a page, but that's all. Redirect URI, we need to redirect something, and blank auth and .html is actually the default coming from the Teams Toolkit app registration. So I defined the exact same thing here in the redirect URI. Let's actually create the same redirect HTML over here, which will be empty, but we will still need that. Under www root, I will just go to add and new item. And we will just create a blank HTML with the exact same name. Blank auth and .html. And this is created. We don't need to edit anything here. It's just to use in the redirect. And login type, we will not use login, but we will need pop-up for the scope. Authority will be coming from the existing configuration again, and the scopes, I will require all of these permissions to run my productivity dashboard properly with the files, calendar, and to do. So I added all of the scopes here, and that's all. So let's start designing our tab. Once we're done with the authentication part, the rest of the stuff we will do is everything is the tab.razor. So this is actually our tab, and here we already have a page you've seen in the default version. I will just delete this welcome page, and we will start adding our existing Microsoft Graph Toolkit components. So I added the person component, which will show up on the top and showing my picture and my name. You can also use login component, but we're not going to use any login feature. So I just use the person component over here. I also want to design 3 different columns with calendar, to-do, and files. Just to show that as a column, I prepared a div structure. It's a really basic HTML, but here we have 3 lines of titles as calendar events, to-do, tasks, and files. And the bottom row will be the data itself. Just to run the data itself, we will need the components, and let's add the components over here too. The first component will be MGT agenda. The second component will be MGT to do. And the third, let's add MGT file list. Okay, so this should work fine. I was actually going to test this out without adding CSS, but it might be a bit slow. So let's add the CSS and then test out when we reach the final point. Okay, so we are done designing our tab as well. Let's extend the tab.razor, and you will see tab.razor.css here. So since we are not running anything with the welcome page, I'm going to remove everything here and use the existing basic CSS that I created, which is also available in the tutorial. And we're pretty much ready to go. Let's run the same app again and see if we forgot anything. This is pretty easy to build because Teams Toolkit is helping a lot with the app registrations in the Active Directory, and we are using single sign-on as well. So the only thing left for us mainly is just designing our own app. And if the pop-up works fine, that means we're good to go. Okay, let's add our app. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the main thing we tried to do here, instead of clicking anything, we wanted to pop up the permissions consent page first. Once I accept this, I should be able to see everything available in the productivity dashboard. So that was the main idea. We don't want user to log in again because we all also have the user information coming from the existing Active Directory. We just want to use the hint and use the SSO feature. And then we give the permissions. After that, we will be able to see everything. If you want to see something more, like when I, for example, want to see a colleague joining the same event, I need to give more permissions. And this is automatically coming from the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. And you can extend the permissions range and you can see more items here. And if you want to customize anything in your productivity dashboard, of course, you can do that with the Graph Toolkit components. For me, the best place to go for customization when it comes to Microsoft Graph Toolkit components is mgt.dev. You can actually practice everything there and then copy paste in your own app. But I usually prefer to add some of the attributes like group by day, or some of the maybe adding maximum number of the day you want to see. I think rerunning the app would be hard in this point, but actually you can do a lot of customization by just going to mgt.dev. You will see all the attributes available here, and as well as you can customize the styling. You don't have to use the existing styling given by the components. You can customize the entire thing for your own organization. This is pretty much it. I want to share the link for the tutorial as well. If there's any questions, I would like to answer if I have any time left.
Let's go to the second demo. We can answer the questions on the chat, and let's see if there's extra time in the end, so that we don't go over with the next set of slides and demos. But thank you, Aika. Really, really cool stuff. And really, I love the simplicity of this application because it shows the power of the MGT as well in the context of Microsoft Teams. So really, really cool stuff. So you really, truly were able to implement a useful application within a matter of minutes with Teams Toolkit. So really, really cool stuff.
Thanks.
Excellent. So next we're going to talk about a bit about SharePoint Framework. We'll do a kind of where are we, what's happening. And as last week, there was announcements already related on Microsoft Viva Home. There's some new capabilities there. And then we're going to sneak, maybe talk about bit about the future as well. So because there's a lot of investments in this area. Now, let me actually get started. So I will do a few slides. Alex will do actual few demos related on SPFX in Teams and also in Viva and all of that stuff. But SharePoint Framework, it is the easiest way to build your enterprise solutions for Microsoft 365. So SharePoint Framework, regardless of the name, is not only for SharePoint. It's also for Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Viva and even more in the future. So we're able to expose automatically hosted components and solutions directly in the context of Microsoft 365 with automatic single sign-on. And this comes back on the fact that as the solution is automatically hosted for you, it is running in the context of Microsoft 365 and running in the same tenant as you are or the customer is running the solution. So there won't be any problems with the data moving around between the Azure and also within the tenant as well, because again, component is running inside of the tenant. SharePoint Framework also provides a consistent development experience for Microsoft Teams, for Viva, Microsoft Viva, and for SharePoint Online, and actually more in the future. We'll talk about that one in the upcoming slides. And it's using industry standard tooling. So there it is using Yeoman Generator, it is using WebStack tooling, it is all about TypeScript, and of course behind the scenes we're using Microsoft Graph for accessing capabilities in the Microsoft 365. So you have full access on the APIs and information of particular user or in the context of the user. Now, those individual shapes and capabilities, as said, SharePoint Framework is for Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, and SharePoint, and soon even more. So the soon even more will be visible as part of the upcoming Ignite announcement. So I cannot actually share all of those details yet. I would be super excited to show you, but we'll do another demo after Ignite. And again, Ignite was on 12th to 14th of October, but you'll see that announcement happening, I think, in 12th of October. Now, as we're building SharePoint Framework components and experiences in TypeScript, You can use whatever JavaScript framework you want. Typically, quite often people use React because in Microsoft we use React as the default framework. You don't have to. You can do Angular, you can do Vue, you can do Amber, whatever is your chosen framework. There's a new framework every single week, which is the newest and the most and the best one. Behind the scenes, we're of course using Microsoft Graph for accessing the information. And then we have different shapes and extensibility points across the SharePoint and Microsoft Viva and Microsoft Teams, which you can build using the SharePoint Framework components. And just to be super clear, this is not about necessarily, this is typical when you're building a SharePoint Framework solution and a component, it's not about surfacing pages inside of Viva or inside of Teams or inside of SharePoint. You are actually building individual TypeScript components, which you can then expose in the different shapes and different capabilities inside of these solutions, which is really, really cool. React is fine, it says Andrea on the chat. Now, I wanted to call out and show some teaser pictures also on where you can actually use SharePoint Framework. Just a bit of a marketing message and a bit of a marketing things, but just to call out an example. So of course you can use SharePoint Framework to extend and modify SharePoint Online. All of the UX elements, what you see in these pictures, are actually being built using SharePoint Framework. Even the out-of-the-box capabilities, which you see in this picture, are being built by SharePoint Framework. And that's the really cool thing. So even Microsoft engineering, with hundreds of developers, are using SharePoint Framework. So it is a really, really great capability of extending Microsoft 365. On the left side, you'll see the homepage of a imaginary Relay Cloud tenant. And in there, you can see those individual web components or web widgets, which we call web parts in SharePoint. And you can build individual components, as many of you want. You can also build menus, footers, and so on, extensibility within a SharePoint. On the top right corner, you'll actually see a teaser on an application page, which is a full page experience within SharePoint Online. So you're able to build those kind of dashboards super easily using React as well, and then accessing LOB data or graph data for surfacing that relevant information for you. And then the smaller picture in the middle is actually a custom form, because you are able to build custom form and experiences using SharePoint Framework. So of course you can do that custom form development using Power Apps as well, but then there's a licensing implications and learning curve and all of that. If you are a React developer or a web stack developer or a pro developer, you probably want to write your form and experience and really fine-tune that end user experience in a pro development way using then TypeScript and React, or again, whatever is a chosen framework. Now, you can use SharePoint Framework also to build experiences in Microsoft Teams. And this is a few examples of those experiences. The bigger picture is the same dashboard as what you saw on the last page, exposed as a personal application in the Microsoft Teams. The interesting thing is there are no code changes needed to make the same component to be available within SharePoint or within the Microsoft Teams. So it's exactly the same piece of code, which you can actually expose in the both applications, and actually even more in the future, which is really, really cool. In the top right corner, there's an example of surfacing my sites, because we can access easily the Microsoft Graph APIs in the context of Microsoft Teams with automatic single sign-on. So it is seamless authentication within the context of the user. And then the lower piece, the smallest picture, is actually a messaging extension implemented using a SharePoint framework in the Microsoft Teams. And now, related on the announcements from last week, we actually teased a new location, a new extensibility model. Unfortunately, in our messaging, we didn't really explain what are the extensibility options and capabilities around the Microsoft Viva Home, which will be by default available in the Microsoft Teams for all of the companies. Now, the bigger picture here is the Microsoft Viva Home. And it's basically a combination or evolution of the Microsoft Viva connection bits and pieces, which are the dashboard, the feed, and then the assets. So there's an option of creating this Microsoft Viva Home for the tenants, and by default, it will be in some of the tenants sooner or later. And in that Microsoft Viva Home, those individual cards, what you can see on the dashboard, are extensible and creatable by using SharePoint Framework. Of course, behind the scenes, you will take advantage of, again, Microsoft Graph for connecting to the API. Then the SharePoint Framework component is going to use adaptive cards for rendering the card in that dashboard. Now, The reason why it's a dashboard based on adaptive cards and this kind of a card design is that experience is really designed to be accessible and approachable also in mobile. So this is not only for people who are sitting 8 hours in every single day in front of their computers. It's for people who are working as a frontline worker, walking in the streets, going and visiting customers, let's say doing whatever work in the warehouses and so on. So they are the people who don't sit in the front of desktop, but they need to get connected still on the company information, the task, the submitting hours, or what's the latest news in the company, or getting connected and the company communications, HR details, and all of that. And that's where the Viva Connection mobile experience is really designed to shine. So you can actually use those SharePoint Framework components to provide a Microsoft Viva Connection or Viva experience directly in the mobile experiences. And then on the top right, we can see a few teasers on the different design options in here. Now, coming back on the what's happening in the future, I want to make sure that I have enough time for Alex to do the demos and a quick update on what we have right now. So we've been already having more than 20 versions released of SharePoint Framework, and we started back in 2016 with a relatively small amount of capabilities, and it's been extending more and more across the Microsoft 365. The latest version for production is 1.15.2, which was released in August, and there was a lot of new capabilities for simplifying, for example, API approval workflow for multi-tenant applications in Microsoft 365. There was a new media actions for Viva Connection for the mobile experiences and all of that. 1.16 preview is already out. That's basically a beta version of the upcoming capabilities. That's already out. It's not released in a few weeks ago. Yeah, it was released a few weeks ago. Kind of makes sense in English, doesn't it? But it has the Teams JavaScript SDK v2 native support. It has additional capabilities inside of that as well, and you can already test it out. 1.16 GA is going to happen by end of 2022, and then 1.17 probably in December, January, most likely January because of the holiday season starting in US roughly in end of November, because that's how the business works in US. But a lot of capabilities. We're looking into moving into a quarterly release cycle, or at least 3 versions in a year. And on the bigger picture, you can already see the Viva logo, SharePoint logo, Viva Connection logo, and a Teams logo, which are the current extensibility points for SharePoint Framework. But already as teased, in Ignite, we'll give you even more. So that's the present with the star there, but I cannot go to details at this moment, but it's cool to see additional capabilities in Microsoft 365 where you can use the exact same component without any code changes, and still it's exposed in the new locations. So really reusing those existing investments in the most efficient way for your solutions. Now let's move to the actual demo. So that was me, a semi-marketing statement. I'm a product manager. I guess product manager. I really need to always rethink my title. But let me share the stage with Alex. Alex is going to actually show you getting started with SharePoint Framework. This might be super, let's say, familiar for some of you, but we also wanted to show the latest of getting started experience and how easy it is to actually build those components across the different experiences. And Alex is, by the way, great example of one of our MVPs who used to be an MVP and building ISV solutions for customers with SharePoint Framework, but nowadays he's an engineer and has solved, I guess, Alex, you already solved all of the issues which you had submitted as a partner or as an MVP.
Yeah, unfortunately, we needed to roll back one of the fixes, but yeah, other than that, yes.
Yes, good. But anyway, Alex, let's move into your screen. And let's do a quick getting started on SharePoint Framework, just to recap on how easy it is to get started. Take it away.
Yeah. So yeah, as Vesa mentioned, it's really easy to start with SharePoint Framework development. It's based on commonly used web development tools. So first thing, if you're developing the first ever SharePoint Framework app on your machine, you need to install some prerequisites. It's done using NPM, which is also standard for web development. And what you need Yeoman generator, which is Yo. You need Gulp CLI, and you need our Microsoft generator SharePoint itself. And these things you need to install globally, so they will be available in any folder of your machine. So when these modules are installed, you'll be able to go to the selected folder and start scaffolding your solution. In my case, of course, I have already installed all these prerequisites, and I'm already in my demo folder. And here I can start creating my SharePoint Framework solution as easy as that. So you're just doing like yo at Microsoft/SharePoint. When you click enter, after that, our generator will start asking you a few questions like, do you want to create a new solution or add something to existing solution? What type of solution you want to create, what type of component you want to add. And first time when you're launching it, it's taking a time to kind of start the Yeoman generator. But yeah, as you can see, it's asking your solution name, what type of component you want to add to your solution. Let's see, like web part, you're providing the default name, you're selecting what framework you want or what template you want to use. Currently, there are 3 templates for web parts. The first one, minimal, you're kind of getting the blank web part with no frameworks in there. You're kind of just need to create everything from scratch. You just have the blank render method and nothing else. If you select no framework option, you will kind of have few methods already defined for you, but again, without any client-side framework. And React one is for React components, so you will have a simple React component created for you, and rendering and this component will be used in render method of the web part. But again, I have prepared everything already, so I have the solution created, and in my case, I'm using React. And let me actually do that, and I will increase the font a little bit too. So this is kind of the default solution that will be propagated for you. If we go to SRC folder, and now let's look at the web parts, because adaptive cards extensions is the next one I want to show. But if you go to the web parts, we have this SPFX basic demo. And I used React in that case, so that's why you have this React component that provides some basic logic with some beautiful, let's say, UI, demo UI with some images, some links, important links for the SPFX development. And if we go to the web part itself, you'll see that you have rendering here to use your React component. You have some code on init to get the environment message, and environment message actually shows you how your solution can be used both in SharePoint and in Teams. So if you have these .context.sdks.microsoft Teams initialized, it means that you're running in Teams. Otherwise, you're running in SharePoint. And also you can detect if you're currently debugging, meaning that you're serving your JavaScript files from localhost, or you're serving your solution from SharePoint Online itself. So pretty standard small parts of the code that will show you how to do the basics using SharePoint Framework. Another thing I want to mention here is if we go to the web part manifest that basically shows our engine, how the web part should be served, when it should be available. Very important thing here is supported hosts that actually identifies where your web part will be available. And by default, when you scaffold a new web part, it provides 4 options in here. So your web part will be available as a standard web part that can be added to the page. It will be available as a Teams personal app, which means that you can install your app to the left up bar in Teams. It will be available as a Teams tab, or in Teams it is called configurable tab. It means that you can add web part to your Teams or group chats, and also as SharePoint full page means that you can add your web part as a single part up page. So basically you have the full page with the only web part on it. So when our solution is ready, you can of course do some customizations needed for your solution. You go back to the terminal, and now we want to basically add this solution to the SharePoint Online. So to do that, I need to run two commands. First, gulp bundle, and if I use ship parameter in here, it will basically minify, compile all the code and prepare it for actual release, for actual shipment. If I don't use that, in that case, it means that you probably want to debug your solution and serve your solution from the local host. And after we finish with the gulp bundle, the next step is to run gulp package-solution. And again, we have the same parameter here, either ship or not ship. And package solution task will actually create an SPPKG file. And this SPPKG file is actually used to deploy your solution to the app catalog. Again, I have already done that. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code, you will see that in my SharePoint solution folder, I have this SPPKG package that can be actually added to my SharePoint Online. And let me go here, and I will go to SharePoint App Catalog. Let me zoom a little bit here as well. And if you're creating, again, the first ever solution for your organization, it might be possible that you don't have App Catalog yet. In that case, you need to go to your admin center, go to More Features, and here you have Apps. And if you click on Apps, actually the same, in my case, the same UI for app catalog will be opened, but if it's not created, if this app catalog site collection is not propagated, it will be created on the fly, and at the end you will still be redirected to the same UI. Here we can click upload, and I'm selecting this SPPKG file that we saw. Open, it's uploading. And the first, what we are seeing here, it asks us is if we want to just enable this app or enable this app and add it to all sites. If you're not familiar, we have this kind of definition of tenant-wide deployment in SharePoint Framework. If your solution is marked as for tenant-wide deployment, it means that you can enable it for each and every site collection on your tenant. And additionally, this feature is important if you're going to serve your solution in Teams as a Teams app. In that case, you need to select this, enable this app, and add it to all sites. So let's enable the app. It is enabled. And now, if I select it, there is also this option to add to Teams. Let me click on this. And now our solution should be available in Teams too. But first, let me go to my SharePoint site. Let me refresh it. And let me add the web part in here. And sorry, my machine is a little bit slow. Let's go somewhere. Come on. Here. And SPFX Basics demo. I'm adding it here, and you see how it behaves in SharePoint. So basically, this is what you're getting out of the box. You have an image, you have information about the current user, what is your property from property pane, and some additional information just listed to showcase how the web part will be looking in your environment. Now let me try to go to Teams, and I will refresh also to see if the app is propagated. And here I'll be adding the same app, SPFX Basics Demo. As you can see, I did nothing in Teams at all. The only thing I did is basically I went to SharePoint Admin Center and clicked Sync to Teams. And all the magic is based on our manifest. So first of all, we provided this Teams Personal App and Teams tab here as supported host. And if you look at the Solution Explorer, you will see that we have this Teams folder with basic icons. but we don't even have a Teams manifest. It will be created for you on the fly when you click Sync to Teams. But if you want to have some custom manifest, you can do that. You can add manifest.json file in Teams folder. And in that case, when you click on Sync to Teams, we'll just use the manifest from your Teams folder. But in my case, I just use standard one, and the app is available in Teams. I'm adding it. And here is the same solution running in Teams. So I'm running out of time, so let me quickly show the second part, which is related to ACEs. So basically, in the same solution, you can, again, run our generator. And instead of adding a web part, you can add extension, or in our case, you can add, you can add adaptive cart extension. You can select the type of extension, the basic template you want to use. And when you've done that, in your solution, you will see these adaptive cart extensions that provide you, again, the basics for the adaptive cart with the basic quick view functionality and the cart view functionality. And again, as soon as you've done that and you deploy the solution, which in our case have already been done, we can go back here, and in our SharePoint site, you can see the dashboard. Right now, it just has one ACE on the dashboard. But let me go manage Viva connections, view the dashboard details, edit. And here I have my custom card in here. And if I republish the dashboard and then go back to the communication site, you will see your custom ACE rendered in the dashboard. And this ACE will be available on mobile everywhere where your Viva Connections app or Viva Home app is served, for example, in Teams, on mobile, and so on and so forth. And that's probably all I have. And sorry for wasting 3
Excellent, Alex.
minutes.
No, it's all good. I talked too much on the intro, and I have to call out, whatever you built there is ready for production now. So there was no additional steps. You deployed them to the app catalog. You finalize the code. It's production ready. Of course, these are not looking super polished, but it's the deployment process for production is as sweet and easy as that. And you can, of course, do automation of that in the Azure side as well. Now, recording of this call will be available within 24 hours in the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel, the aka.ms M365 videos. Do subscribe on that one. Follow us on Twitter so you can easily know when new content is available. And the next platform community call is within October 4th, 8 a.m. Pacific time. So a week from now, we will keep on doing this in a weekly basis. But that's it for now. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And let's stay in touch. Keep the feedback coming. We are building our Microsoft 365 platform for you. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ran. Bye.